From mastering the art of saving to harnessing the power of investments, we cover it all. But it's not just about the money. It's about cultivating a millionaire mindset that propels you towards success in every aspect of your life. Join our community of ambitious go-getters and discover the secrets to becoming a millionaire by morning. Subscribe now to Millionaire by Morning on your favorite podcast platform. And let's make your financial dreams a reality. Millionaire by Morning, where money mindset, motivation, and mastery meet. Subscribe today and unlock your path to prosperity.
Hello. Welcome you all back to the Millionaire by Morning podcast. Once again, we have a special guest with us today, a guest who goes by the name of John Long. We're going to be discussing a little bit of his background, which is in retail. He spent 35 plus years in the retail industry as a senior executive, management consultant, and executive search advisor. He's passionate about innovation and growth and is an expert in identifying the leadership required to bring them about. He has a new book coming out in early 2026 titled Hire Without Ego, and it provides a framework to help companies improve their senior hiring decisions. Also, we want to speak about his newest venture, the Hawk Nest Group. Welcome to the show today, John.
Well, thanks so much. Great to be here.
Awesome, man. Glad to have you. Glad that you took your time out today to spend it with us. I know we'll be learning a lot from your 35 plus years experience in retail. Um, and as an expert, can you, John, take us back? You are now an entrepreneur. I know you've worked a lot as a consultant, you've worked in the retail industry. How did it all begin? Can you take us back to the beginning?
Yeah, so the beginning was probably when I was in college and was thinking about what I wanted to do when I grow up, like most people do. And I had an internship at a retail company in the Washington, D.C. area. It was called Hex. It doesn't exist anymore. It's actually part of Macy's now. But I really liked that summer internship a lot. I liked the fact that retail is very hands-on. It's very entrepreneurial in nature. And really at a young age in the industry, you can get a lot of responsibility and also, be responsible for an actual business, right? Where you're actually running a business within Macy's. And so when I graduated from college, I joined Macy's in New York um, and was there for about 3 years in what they call their executive training program, and really experienced firsthand how to run a business and really enjoyed it. Like the fact that retail is, for better or for worse, very unpredictable, right? It really depends on customers and it changes from day to day. There's always something new going on, whether it has to do with the product itself in terms of fashion and trends and things like that, or whether it has to do with technology, like when the digital age started about 25 years ago and we started e-commerce. So that's really, the very start of my interest in the industry. And really, I think the fact that it changes all the time is what's kept me so engaged with it for so long.
Awesome. It is also retail is not as easy as it may seem or
No, it's not.
people may think. When I was in college, I was in a business class to where we had to open a retail shop.
Oh, interesting.
So, yes, it was very interesting because before that, I was familiar with entrepreneurship, but the retail shop and the way that it's structured and the intricacies and the constant changes, it is a um, it is a difficult space to be in.
It
So I
is.
can I can see why you say long term, you know, if you can grab a hold to it, then it's always interesting. So I could see someone staying with that.
Yeah, it is. It's very, and I think it is interesting, right? Because it involves almost like a puzzle, trying to figure out what customers are going to want. Not so much what they want right now, because sometimes you don't have the product yet, right? But what are they going to want a month from now, a year from now, and trying to really almost be a fortune teller in some ways.
Definitely, definitely. Um, Very interesting. So you were with Macy's during this time, and they have a very extensive program, correct?
They do. They do. Their program really focuses on taking you through all different aspects of the business and effectively immersing you in certain roles for about a year so that when you come out of it, you've really had a chance to see almost a 360-degree view of everything that goes on in the company. So I actually left after about 3 years to join a startup retail company and felt like I had really gotten some great training from them on what good should look like. And in those days, Macy's was one of the top performing retailers in the nation. Department stores were still popular places to shop. I mean, it was a long time ago, right? But it was a great training program.
I'm glad you mentioned that, brought it up. Retail is not what retail used to be. It's different depending on your generation.
Yep.
Where we're at right now, do you have any insight to where I think we're stuck at some point to where we don't really know, like you were saying about telling the future of retail, just what the customer want. Right now, I believe we're stuck in a time where we don't know how that will even get to the customer. The product will even how customers will be able to order it. So where do
Right.
you where do you think we're at as far as that's concerned right now?
It's so interesting that you asked that question because um, certainly in my lifetime, what I've seen when we started out in retail, when I started out in retail, um, the power really lied. I mean, yes, customers were obviously critical to the business, right? But the power was really the retailers. They owned the distribution channel, right? They owned the way that you would or would not be able to get a product, and particularly as it related to brands, right? Certain brands were very protective of which retailers they allowed to carry their brands, et cetera. I would say that today, largely, the power lies in the customer because it's the customer, right, that can shop anywhere they want. I mean, I could be shopping right now at my house on my phone or on my computer. And as a retailer, you don't have much control over that, right? Because you may or may not have the product I want. You may never see me or even know that I even considered shopping in your store. Whereas, you know, 40 years ago, we all had to go into stores to shop. You knew if, I mean, I could tell you at Macy's, we used to do traffic counting, right? So I knew the number of customers that came in and the number of customers that bought and the number of customers that left without buying. So I could manage that really tightly. Now it's even harder to do because I can come at a business from so many different channels: phone, computer, catalog, telephone, in person. And it's really a lot harder because the retailer now has to meet the customer wherever they are.
Right. And with that, the customer the customer does have, I guess you would say, the advantage or the upper hand in choosing what
Yeah.
it is. But on the flip side of that, we also have analytics
Yep.
and the algorithm.
Hmm.
So how important, and also you mentioned AI, how important are those, how important are those things as it relates to the customer shopping experience and a retailer knowing can foresee that shopping experience?
More and more, it really matters. I'll give you an example. Historically, and this is only going back 10 or so years, right? Retailers had their own e commerce sites set up. And you as a customer would go visit that e-commerce site. You might look at the picture, you might read the copy, you might look at the price and make a decision based on that, or you might even have a sophisticated um, application that might show you the lowest price, right? Which retailers have this same item at the lowest price, and you might choose it for a price reason. Today, we're at the cusp of having actual AI agents go off and do that for you. And why is that different? Well, it's different if you think about it, because I used to write, if I'm at a retailer, right, and I'm writing copy for something on the website, I'm writing it for a human to appeal to a human. Well, that's not necessarily what the AI agent might be looking at or what the AI agent might respond to. And so actually there's a whole new way that retailers are just beginning, like that we're in the first like year of this, beginning to reorient the text and the copy and the pictures on their items on their website to what an AI agent will find most appealing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, right? Because we've never ever had to have a machine talking to a machine before, but that's kind of where we are.
A machine talking to a machine. I've read about that, and it's kind of. I want to ask you this question: the time that we're in right now, for you, does it seem like a scarier time or a more exciting time?
So I always, it's a great question. I always feel, and this is true probably because I'm in retail. I think that you've got to embrace change. You really, and in this case, I would say that unlike the digital transformation that occurred back at the turn of the century, so 25 years ago, where retailers, or really a lot of companies, could have played the waiting game, right? Could have played that sort of fast follower game and said, we don't really know how this is going to pan out. Let's wait a little bit and see which companies succeed, which companies don't succeed, and maybe follow the ones that are successful and implement those types of digital strategies. I would say that now we're in an age where you have to be faster than that. And frankly, I like to call it the compounding interest of AI, which is that the longer that you're sort of experimenting with it and playing with it, the more successful, excuse me, you'll ultimately become, because your learning curve is that much further along. And I think that's tremendously valuable and very different than it was in the digital age, where you could have afforded to wait a little bit.
Yeah, it's happening daily.
Yeah.
It's changes happening daily.
Yep.
When you do consulting work, and then I'll ask you this and get into your
Sure.
to your new business, but is that something that, because it's happening so fast, and we all come from a different industry before the AI disruption.
Right.
So is that something that you can marry together at the moment in time, working as a consultant? And basically what I mean is, you know, we're all learning this thing together. So if you're at the learning curve of the next company, do you take all of your eggs and put them in the AI basket so you can move ahead of the learning curve earlier? And then that way within your business, you can consult on that? Or,
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think where you have to, I think what you have to do, right? Because we all are learning for sure, right? There are people that may be expert in pieces of it, but I don't think there's enough experience yet where there's people that sort of know as much as you could know. Because I'm not sure how you'd be able to do that. I think that it right now is a place where you've got to. I would almost take a page out of Jeff Bezos's book, right, and say the more you're trying different things um, in ways that you will learn from, the better. Inherently, you're going to fail at certain things, and you just sort of need to accept that, right? That is the sort of price you pay for testing. But I always say that testing comes with learning, and frankly, I think in my lifetime, I've probably learned more from failure than I have from being right. So I encourage almost every client to try a number of things. Obviously, yeah, you got to be prudent, right, about how you spend your precious money. But
Right.
it really is about not placing a necessarily big bet on one thing, but actually probably trying to think through four or five things that you could do and try. And if all four or five fail, okay, you learn something, but more likely than not, they'll all give you some learning. And what you may find out is actually all four or five were not right entirely by themselves, but there's pieces of each that were right. And then you sort of cobble together a second round of testing to really begin to refine what the right path is.
Good. That's good. Excellent answer. Excellent answer. I'm pretty sure someone is listening out there can really appreciate that answer. So the Hawks Nest group, can we get into that a little bit? And what does it offer? What are your services there?
So it's a great question. It's funny because, when I first started it, which was about a year ago, a little over a year ago, um, I really sought to just do search work. I said, I've spent a long time in the retail industry. I know a lot of people. I've spent a lot of time consulting retailers. I've spent a lot of time finding C-level executives or board members for retailers. I'm just going to go and do that on my own because I think that is a business that I know a lot about and can do well with. What I discovered, I think, is that when you reach a certain point in your life and you've done a number of different things, even within an industry, you become known for yourself and not necessarily one thing, if that makes sense. And so, what I learned pretty quickly was that even though I was technically trying to do my business as a search consultant, I had people come and say, "Hey, can you help me with this particular problem in my business?" Or "I've got a question about AI. Could you help me with that?" And so all of a sudden, I went back and said, "Yeah, I could probably do some consulting work within this company." And then I got involved with an AI business, and I said, "Well, yeah, I can do that too." And so I would say that today, a year later, the company that I started as a search only company is now more a reflection of me and all the different things that I do and get energy from, as well as all the things I've done historically that people know me for. And so it's probably more like the John Long company than it
Yeah.
is like a singular thing anymore. But I like that. That gives me a tremendous amount of energy uh, as a person.
That's so awesome, man. You're basically just a personal brand, and you're able to do what you're able to do and what you're known for. That's the beautiful thing about consultancy. You have a lot of different areas. Um, what is it? Jack of all trades, expert at none. So it's basically that type of deal, man. And you have dealt, I read your biography and your background, and over your career, you've dealt with some globally recognized companies.
Yeah.
And you would want to take that and kind of, you know, spread that around, spread your knowledge around. And a lot of people can benefit from that. So, yeah, I can see which direction you're going in with that.
It's interesting. What I didn't realize, in my life was that would happen. Because I think we tend to choose careers. We tend to be very focused, and certainly that was me at different points in my career. But I think I liken it to what Warren Buffett said in his book called Snowball, and I thought it was a really great analogy, which is that if you play life right, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but conceptually what he suggests is that your life is kind of like a snowball and it's slowly going down a hill. Now, it unfortunately will never go back up the hill because that's not the way life works, right? But as it goes down the hill, it hopefully is collecting more and more snow and getting larger and larger and larger. And if that's sort of your objective, which is throughout your life to collect more and more snow, in my case, it's clients and friends and people like that. Um, then as you go through it, you're really, really fortunate to have lots of contacts and friends, and in my case, clients who were actually also in many cases friends. that you get to work with. And I find myself at that point today in my career where I really get a chance to work with people that I really, for in some cases, have known for 20 plus years.
And get the chance to work with them. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great, man. And another thing, another awesome thing that I found, especially through this podcast, is the power of referral and affiliate and just kind of being a connector. Even if you're not an expert at a certain thing,
Right.
you can just, hey, I have a friend over here that can do what you need. What pain point do you have? I can point you in the direction of someone who can fix that.
You're 100% right. It is really funny. There are certain people, right, that are really, um, I would say, nervous about saying that they don't know the answer to something. Um, I'm really comfortable doing that, for better or for worse. I have no problem saying, I really don't know the answer to that, but I bet you I can find somebody pretty quickly within my network that will have a pretty good answer. And that's kind of how, executive search comes up, right? Which is, well, I'm not going to be the CEO of the company, but I bet I know 4 or 5 people that would be great at that job. And so
Right.
it's very similar that way.
Yeah, definitely. And you do the you find board members as well, people who
Yeah.
okay, okay. And you sit on a board for yourself. I like to give you some time to, if it's anyone you want to, promote or any service or board or anyone you work with. I like to give you that time to do that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so I sit on a local board, actually. It's based here in Dallas, Texas. It's called Gifting Brands. And the board was founded, company was founded, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, by a really good friend of mine, Jeannie Barsom, who had been a senior executive at Michael's stores as well as at Zales. And she had this idea that there was a way to give charities an opportunity to benefit from overages that retailers had. So think about things that don't sell at a retailer that are still perfectly good, um, mostly jewelry. Um, and those companies, whether it's Zales or others, might need to get rid of those items, right? They may have closeout centers or clearance centers or things like that. But Gifting Brands gives them an opportunity to donate them to Gifting Brands. And then we give that product to charities to then auction off at their own events and raise money for their different causes. And it's really been extremely rewarding. We've learned a lot because I think our business model over the 6 or 7 years has changed pretty dramatically in terms of how we do this. But now we are working with a number of charities across the country and helping them raise really substantial amounts of money because it's focusing on accessories and jewelry and things like that that are higher ticket than some of the other things that they might have at an auction or an event.
Right. Oh wow, that's awesome, man.
It's been fun.
Yeah. So, John, what's in store for the future? Near future, long term goals?
Mentioned I'm working with this AI company right now. We just closed a round of funding, which will be very important for us. Allows us now to expand, but it's a pretty powerful agentic AI software for retailers. I've been working with them as an advisor for the last almost 8 months, and I would say that the future for that business, I think, is extremely bright. The software is now on 3 continents, soon to be 4. And I think we'll be a pretty major force in the retail industry. I don't know that we'll be the only one, although today we are, that does this. I think we'll certainly be very, very successful in getting this adopted by a lot of sort of very recognized retailers around the world. That I would say is one thing. And then I would say the other is, the search business continues to be a good one. Retail is always looking for great talent, whether it's in marketing or at the C level or as a board member. And so that business continues to be very strong. And then, I would say that strategy work continues to be strong as well as retailers, particularly are looking at things like AI and trying to figure out what they should do, right? Where do they start? How do they start? Those types of things. So I think that's probably going to be a pretty full plate for me over the next 12 to 24 months.
And one more thing that we haven't mentioned to include there on the full plate, your book. Let's
That's true. That's true. I
let's
always
not
I always
forget
forget
about that.
something, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, man. Let's jump into that. What is the book about?
So the book is called Hire Without Ego, and it really has a premise, which is that very often board members and C-level executives, so senior people, like to imagine their companies are in one place on the life cycle. We talked about the snowball, right? So if you think about a company goes through the same life cycle, right? It has a launch or an introduction, it has a growth period, it has a maturity period, and then it has a decline period. And really, most companies really want to be in growth. Whether they're in maturity or decline, they still want to be in growth. It's like all of us, I think, right? When you get to retirement, you still, probably want to be in your 40s. And companies are not that different, and executives of companies are not that different. They would like to imagine themselves in a different place, and because of that, and to some degree, that is the ego part of it, right? Because they want to imagine themselves in the growth phase when they're actually in maturity or decline, it leads them to hire people that aren't right for the period of time that they're in. So, said a different way, the people that can grow a company are very often not the same people that can manage a mature business. And a great example is, Jeff Bezos. I talk about him in my book as being a very self-aware guy, right? He built a phenomenal business, Amazon, just phenomenal business. But frankly, once he had built it, he was self-aware enough to know that he probably wasn't the right leader to take it through maturity, because frankly, in maturity, you're going to have to do all kinds of things that might be painful, right? You might have to shut a division down that you started, or you might have to lay some people off, or there may be some unpleasant parts of that that you're just not into, because he is, I think, by definition, a really great entrepreneur, and not necessarily a guy who wants to thrive on managing a mature company. He was fortunate that he had Blue Origin sort of standing by, right, ready for him. And so when he hopped off of the Amazon bandwagon, he got right into Blue Origin, which is obviously at a different trajectory in its business. But I think that's the fundamental premise of the book is really that. And frankly, what I try to do in the book is present a framework that helps companies to, one, understand where they really are on that sort of life cycle continuum, and then two, to use that in a powerful way and say, well, just because we're in maturity or just because we're in decline doesn't mean we don't have lots of options for the type of talent that we can bring in, but let's try to more closely align the talent with where we are on that life cycle continuum versus wishing we were in growth and hiring a growth person when we're actually in decline, because that actually doesn't work.
Oh, wow, sounds interesting, man.
It's fun.
Um,
It's fun. I've got
yeah,
lots of different case examples, clients I've worked with, also stuff in the public eye. I talk about, what happens when boards rehire CEOs that used to be there, right, to come back out of retirement and run the company again. That's happened multiple times at Starbucks. It's happening at Disney right now. It happened at Dollar General recently. So there's lots of that also in the book, um, and other stories too.
do you do any case studies on J.C. Penney? Would that happen to be in there?
You know, um, I didn't do one on J.C. Penney only because it was a little older. Um, I was actually It's interesting. I was actually doing some consulting work there when Ron Johnson was there, originally, and sort of know more or less what sort of happened there. It's a great case study. There just, were only so many different examples I wanted to bring in, but that's certainly a good one.
Yeah, that's that was part of my when I was in college. We
Oh, is that right?
did a case study on, yeah, J.C. Penney. So I was
It's
curious about
it's a fascinating company, and today, J.C. Penney is part of a group called Catalyst Brands that is owned by Simon Properties. So same company that owns the mall now owns a number of retailers in the mall, including JCPenney. And it's really part of their strategy, which is that they want to make sure they can continue to have footsteps, foot traffic, customers coming through those facilities, because obviously malls are not necessarily the destinations that they once were.
Right. Right. What I'll ask you this and we'll wrap it up. But what do you see? Malls were such. I want to speak with a retailer about this so bad because I just come from a generation to where malls were such a built-in place in society, and society functioned due to malls. And people got out. You had people working out, walking around the malls. You had just socializing going on. Do you ever think we'll see anything like that again as far as the space?
It's interesting. I I think that we all like to be communal in a lot of different ways. And a little bit what I worry about is that technology has overtaken some of that. And that technology, whether it's TikTok or other things, have become almost a surrogate for the physical community that we all used to remember as a mall or something like that. And I do worry a little bit that the ability to interact with other people has become less and less common in younger generations because they don't have to, right? It can all be virtual. It can all
Right.
be over Zoom, or even worse, it can all just be sending people chats or little videos versus actually interacting with people and having conversations, which is a shame. But I will say that in some of the areas where the weather is more conducive to it, I've seen a lot of really great outdoor malls recently come up, like Legacy West, which is right next door. In fact, it's part of what old JCPenney campus. It's a great place to go. They've got great food, they've got great retailers, and the weather obviously in Dallas is really conducive to that for the most part of the year. And I think there, yeah, certainly Highland Park Village, further south um, from Plano, is the same. Really nice outdoor, obviously very upscale, but outdoor mall. So there's lots of that, I think, that people will still go to. I just don't know, to your point and your question, whether it's going to be such an integral part of people's lives as it used to
Right.
be.
Right. It's kind of like the difference between just ordering something from a food truck and eating in a restaurant.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So,
Good analogy.
anyone listening, where can someone want to follow you? Where do they find you on maybe your socials?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Um, John, I think it's John B.R. Long. So I use my two middle initials because John Long is obviously a really common name. Um, and that's really the only social media that I'm on. I'm cursorily on X, but more just as an observer versus somebody that posts anything.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously, the people can visit my website at thehawksnestgroup.com.
So, where you're at in your business, and where you're at, well, I guess doing business, your marketing, is it more of a word of mouth thing? Because, or are you on LinkedIn actively, kind of marketing yourself?
I think on LinkedIn, I'm primarily using it as a platform when I see something that I feel like I can add some value to in terms of a perspective. Um, Whether that translates to business, I've never really figured out, honestly. I do tend to think that the majority of my business is either by people that know me and have worked with me before, or referrals from that group of people
Right.
for the
Awesome.
most part.
That's where you want to get to. That's the place you want the snowball to go, to
That's
eventually end up where you're just basically can get business off of referrals.
that's
To
right.
anyone,
It's so much better that way, and especially because the world, as you probably know, is really really small, and you kind of don't realize sometimes how small it is, particularly for me in the sense that I've worked in the same industry, and for the most part, people pretty much stay within industries. I mean, certainly in retail they do that, in the consumer packaged goods area they do that, and I'm sure in other verticals they do that as well. And so if you're there long enough, if you're old enough, you pretty much do know almost everybody within a generation and a half ish of yourself.
Right. There's a there's a saying. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's something like 3 degrees of separation. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
And is that correct? Is it three? Is that the correct number?
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right, and it feels right that
It does. It
that
does.
and even if I would say, even if you're not quite that yet, you can usually find a person that knows a person that knows a person, and even if it's that fourth one for a while.
Right.
But again, I think the longer you spend sort of in an industry, um, building a reputation, and really, frankly, people use the word networking a lot. Oh, I have to go network, and I think to myself, I don't really network because it's a little artificial for me to call up somebody I don't know and say, "Hey, I want to network with you." People do that all the time, by the way, but I don't think that's that realistic, right? Because maybe that will produce some value over time, but I doubt it. I really think it's more, hey, just get to know the people that you're working with, really, and establish a reputation for getting things done,
Right.
for having an expertise in something, and using that over time and being consistent about it to build a number of people that know you for that. That to me is very different than networking. Networking to me almost feels too transactional in a way. Um, and that I don't think transactions tend to yield a lot of stickiness over time.
I totally agree. I totally agree. The network, especially the networking where it's, what is it? The speed networking, or meet
Oh
here and we're going to discuss networking, what you do and what you do. It does just seem kind of artificial.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe it works for some.
yeah. And sometimes, look, sometimes I'm not saying it cannot pay off, right? But I just I do think there's like better time spent really cultivating what you have in a really deep and meaningful way. And if you can do that, I do think it pays off dividends. I'm always surprised at the number of people that I'm not necessarily actively keeping in touch with, but who will say, "Oh, I reached out to you because I remember 10 years ago, blah blah blah," which is great.
Yeah.
And it's because 10 years ago, for whatever reason, I made an impression or took time or did something, um, that that resulted in them remembering me. And then there's other people that I've kept in touch with forever, right? So that's less surprising. But I do think that it's sort of, if you take the snowball analogy, particularly for younger people, it really is taking the time to really engage with people and not look at life as so transactional, because ultimately it's trying to pick up as much snow as you possibly can, because you don't know. I enjoy helping people, so I love being able to help people in my network. But similarly, when I need help, I'm more than happy to reach out to people, because I'm 9 times out of 10 they'll be pretty responsive, I find.
Right. Right. Yeah. You have to build it up. And then, you know, um, people are watching, people are listening. And that's the beautiful thing about social media. You can engage and you can put your information out there. There are people that's watching.
Yep.
They are seeing that you are, number one, consistent. So with you being consistent, you're just not that other person who say they may do something and they don't say
Right.
anything else about it. So
Right.
that point,
How
I
did you start? I mean, I should know this, right? But how did you start upon this track that you're on right now?
so with with podcasting,
Yeah.
It's something that I tried, wanted to do. I figured I needed to get in a space.
Hmm.
So this is kind of the space that I ended up in. And just with me meeting people and having the discussions that I have been having, I do have something else that I'm building. But this right here is just an educational opportunity. And it's a way for me to motivate others, inspire others, and say, I have something with knowledge. If my son 10 years down the line and YouTube still exists, which I'm sure it is, he can literally go there, press play, and learn how to be successful
Yeah. Yeah,
with those
I
videos.
have to say I've really been impressed, right, by that side of social media, which is the creative side. Um, the amount of people that historically, right, were I guess the only way to really create something would have been to go off to Hollywood or to write a book or to I don't know to do something that wouldn't necessarily have the exposure that today's social media allows people to have, which I think is tremendous because it
Yeah.
just shows you how broad the spectrum of things out there are, right? There really is something for everybody. Um,
Oh yeah.
in some cases, there's multiple things, right, that are relevant to them, which
Yeah.
is great. I think it's kind of amazing and frankly, how quickly it's happened too.
Yeah, it's happened quickly. And I asked you a question earlier. Does it seem like a scarier time or, an admirable time at this point? And the way that I view it, we study history and there was a barter and trade era.
Right.
I I feel like we're back at that point. I
Hmm.
feel like we've made full circle to say I can create, I can sell your stuff, you can sell my stuff, I can offer you this, I can offer you that, and we can do it such without a middleman other than who's making big tech. But
Right.
you can do that without having a middleman. And I give you, like this podcast, I can give you clips. I can make some very good, clips that you can use for social media. In turn, you give me a really good interview of your knowledge. So we've just exchanged, two different of our best assets.
Right.
So that's how I'm looking at this new era. It's
That's
just
me.
like,
Yeah. 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 And it is interesting. I do think there are people that unfortunately are afraid of it, right? And are going to be afraid of
yeah,
any change that comes about. But I just think we live in a world where things are changing so quickly that we sort of have to get prepared to
right.
accept change and really, frankly, recognize that just because we started off thinking that things were going to be this, and this in our lives, you know, there's all kinds of different branches that are going to form that you didn't even see as you were
Right.
climbing the tree.
Exactly. Exactly. And you just have to, hang on, jump to the next branch and hang on.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Hope
it.
it doesn't snap, right? Hope it doesn't
Right.
snap.
I hope it don't snap. Exactly. So when does this book come out?
They tell me the end of January. It right now is in proofreading, and I'm hoping it's going to be out on Friday from proofreading. But I'm also developing a cover for it. And in fact, I looked at two versions earlier today. So once those two things happen, once it's out of proofreading, it goes to layout, and then I, you know, decide on a cover. But I'm thinking it's the end of January. I wish it was the early part of January, but they tell me don't get my hopes up. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's only a month,
yeah, yeah. Not bad. I
30
mean,
days.
I started to write it back in December of last year, so it's been a full year.
Okay. All right, man. So awesome. John, thank you for coming on this show
Thank you
today.
so much for having me. This was great.
This was great, man. To anyone that's out there listening, give John a follow on LinkedIn. I am pretty sure that you will learn a lot. Check out his website, the Hawkins Group, and read his biography and see how much that he has done. A very experienced individual. And to all of you listening, continue to make moves, make money so you can make meaningful memories. Until next time, see you then.
Thanks, Rashad. Take care.